5 times over 17 years, the SEC had Bernie Madoff dead to rights, and 5 times they let him walk. 5 times their investigators sat across from him, reviewed his records, and walked away convinced he was running a legitimate operation. 5 times, and every single time the fraud was sitting right in front of them. Today, we're going to show you exactly what they missed, and exactly how one man stole $65 billion in broad daylight. Section: The Setup. Before we get into the mechanics of the fraud itself, you need to understand who Bernie Madoff was in the financial world, because that context is everything. Bernard Madoff wasn't some fly-by-night operator working out of a strip mall. He was a Wall Street institution. He founded his firm, Bernard L. Madoff Investment Securities, in 1960. He helped build the NASDAQ stock exchange and served as its chairman. He was, by every public measure, one of the most respected figures in American finance. Regulators knew him. Rival firms respected him. Charities trusted him. High-net-worth investors considered getting access to his fund a privilege, something to brag about at dinner parties. That reputation wasn't a side effect of the fraud. According to prosecutors and court records, it was the engine of it. Because when you're Bernie Madoff, nobody asks hard questions. And the people who did ask hard questions, more on them in a moment, were dismissed as jealous or confused. So here's the structure of what he built. Madoff ran 2 separate businesses inside the same firm. The first was a legitimate market-making and trading operation. That business was real, it made money, and it gave the whole enterprise a credible foundation. The second was his investment advisory business, and that is where the fraud lived. According to court filings and SEC findings, Madoff told investors he was using a strategy called a split strike conversion, buying large-cap stocks and hedging them with options contracts to generate steady, reliable returns. Steady, reliable, year after year, regardless of what the broader market was doing. In good years and bad years, Madoff's clients saw consistent gains. That consistency, it turned out, was the biggest red flag of all. But we'll come back to that. Section: How it actually worked. Here's the part that makes this case so instructive. A Ponzi scheme at its core is simple. You pay old investors with money from new investors instead of actual investment returns. No real trades happen. No real profits are generated. The money coming in from new clients pays out the promised returns to existing clients. As long as new money keeps flowing in faster than withdrawals go out, the scheme survives. The moment that equation flips, the moment redemptions exceed new investment, the whole thing collapses. What made Madoff's version extraordinary wasn't the concept. It was the execution and the duration. According to court records, prosecutors allege the fraud ran for at least 17 years, though some investigators and analysts have suggested it may have started even earlier. Madoff's firm generated fake account statements, monthly documents that showed clients their fictional portfolio positions, their fictional trades, their fictional gains. Clients received paperwork that looked completely legitimate. Their stated balances grew. Some withdrew money over the years and received real checks that cleared. That's the insidious part. Early and mid-period withdrawals were paid out using new investor money, which made the whole thing feel real to the people experiencing it. The total investor losses, as established through court proceedings and trustee investigations, are estimated at roughly $65 billion in paper wealth, meaning the combined stated account values Madoff's clients believed they held. The actual principal that real people deposited and never recovered is estimated at somewhere between $17 and $20 billion. That distinction matters. Both numbers represent a catastrophic theft. But the $65 billion figure reflects how dramatically Madoff had inflated his clients' stated balances over the years through fabricated returns. Section: The warning signs that were ignored. Now here's the moment that should stop you cold. A financial analyst named Harry Markopolos, by now well documented in congressional testimony and his own published account, spent years trying to alert the SEC to the fraud. Markopolos, a portfolio manager and fraud investigator, later testified before Congress that he had identified mathematical proof that Madoff's stated returns were impossible. His core finding, widely reported and confirmed in congressional records, the options market Madoff claimed to be using simply wasn't large enough to accommodate the volume of trades his strategy would have required at the scale he was operating. The math didn't work. The trades couldn't have happened. Markopolos submitted detailed complaints to the SEC multiple times over roughly a decade. According to congressional testimony and the SEC's own subsequent internal review, the agency failed to conduct a serious quantitative examination of Madoff's claims. Investigators reportedly focused on whether Madoff was front-running trades, a different type of fraud, rather than examining whether the investment returns themselves were fabricated. The SEC's own Inspector General later released a report acknowledging serious failures in how the tips were handled. So the answer to "how did nobody catch this" is somebody did catch it. They just couldn't get the right people to look at the right evidence. Section: The collapse. The financial crisis of 2008 is what finally ended it. Not a regulator, not an audit, not a whistleblower getting through. When markets collapsed in late 2008, Madoff's clients needed their money. Redemption requests poured in. According to court records and his own confession, Madoff faced requests totaling roughly $7 billion that he could not meet. The new money coming in had dried up. The equation had finally flipped. In December 2008, according to court documents and accounts that became part of the public record, Madoff told his sons, both of whom worked at the firm's legitimate trading side, that the investment advisory business was fraudulent. His sons did not cover for him. They contacted a lawyer, and on December 11, 2008, federal agents arrested Bernard Madoff at his Manhattan apartment. He was 68 years old. In March 2009, Madoff pleaded guilty to 11 felony counts, including securities fraud, wire fraud, and money laundering. He did not go to trial. He admitted the scheme in open court. In June 2009, a federal judge sentenced him to 150 years in prison, effectively a life sentence. He died in federal prison in April 2021. Section: The aftermath and the lesson. The court-appointed trustee overseeing the recovery process worked for years to track down assets and return money to victims. Thousands of individuals, charities, pension funds, and other institutions suffered real losses. Some lost their life savings. Some charitable foundations were wiped out entirely. So what's the single biggest lesson this case teaches? The one that ties directly back to where we started. It's this: reputation is not due diligence. The SEC investigated Madoff 5 times and walked away because the man had credibility, connections, and a surface-level paper trail that appeared to check out. Harry Markopolos looked at the numbers themselves, stripped of the reputation, stripped of the prestige, and immediately saw something impossible. The lesson for any investor at any level is exactly that. Returns that are consistently too smooth, too steady, and too good across all market conditions are not a sign of brilliance. According to everything we now know about this case, they are a warning sign. Independent verification, third-party custodians, and audits that come from firms with no relationship to the fund manager aren't bureaucratic inconveniences. They're the only actual protection. If you want to make sure your money is working correctly and protected, subscribe to the Daily Drop. We put out a money win every single day, and every one of them is built on the same principle: understanding the mechanics before you trust the pitch. Now that you know exactly how the largest Ponzi scheme in history was built and why it held together for so long, there's one more thing worth understanding about how your own money moves day to day. And that's in our breakdown called The Difference Between a Debit Card and a Credit Card. Most people assume they know the answer, but the details that actually affect your financial life are almost always the ones nobody explained clearly. That one's up next. And if this case file was useful, subscribe to the Daily Drop. A money win every single day.